Hey y'all, I'm Molly and welcome to the Funny Farm. I decided to start this channel because I wanted to share my experiences with homesteading and gardening with people that I feel like could relate to my experience. I've been following channels that are homesteaders and gardeners where everything seems too perfect. We're seeing, the fruits of years worth of labor and not the beginning stages where there's a lot of trial and error and everything doesn't look perfect and nice and neat and tidy, and they have the most beautiful vegetables and flowers and everything seems to be ideal. My experiences so far with gardening have been full of a lot of challenges. As I am dealing with grief and depression, I have a limited amount of energy that I can put into gardening. I'm very forgetful and I struggle a lot. But the moments where something grows and we eat something fresh from the garden, or I grow something really beautiful that makes me feel good, those little moments are worth it to me to go through the struggles and the challenges that I face with trying to be a gardener. So what I want to share is the good, the bad, and the ugly of my experience so far with trying to homestead and garden. And I really want to be an encouragement to anyone out there who is experiencing something similar. You look at picture perfect gardens and you think, I would love to be able to do that, but I'm nowhere near being able to do it perfectly or on a large scale. And or I planted one thing and the bugs ate it and now I'm feeling completely discouraged. So what I want to offer is a place that is judgment free and probably going to be hilarious, lots of mistakes, but also those moments of success, those moments of joy and growth. And I want you to go on this journey with me so that we can celebrate together, growing as a gardener, growing as a homesteader, growing as a person, and also letting you in on what it's like to try to do all of this while dealing with some serious depression and the realities that come with that. So keep all of that in mind, and please don't judge when I show you the half-done gardens, the things that are laying around on the ground that I could have picked up, but if you know what it's like to struggle with depression, then you know how you have a limited amount of energy, and often looking at something on the ground that could easily be picked up by someone who doesn't struggle, it's just debilitating sometimes, and I have to give myself grace and permission to just let some things go. So with that in mind, let's take a little tour, an overview of the property and the things that I have in the garden right now, and I'll share a little bit about my dreams, my aspirations for this space, and how far it's already come that I can look back and be proud of some of the successes that I actually have managed in my now second year of gardening. Sorry for the planes. We live near an airstrip and also not too far from an Air Force base, so there are constantly airplanes flying overhead. So I'll just apologize now for the pretty constant sound of airplanes. So here you can kind of see that I have a raised bed here and here. This was my first bed from last year, and there are some beans growing right here. There is some asparagus that I plan to move to a permanent bed in the spring. And then you see this beautiful arch where I have had some success with cucumbers and some climbing beans, but right now it's looking kind of sparse. We are kind of in between seasons, and we also have been dealing with the damage from Hurricane Sally. We were on the east side of Sally and had a little bit of damage, a lot of rain, a lot of flooding, but for the most part the garden survived. I have tried to grow some things in containers. What's surviving in this one right now is just some basil and some milkweed that I didn't plant but popped up there. which is great because I'll talk a little bit more about my attempts at a butterfly garden. We have a lot of monarchs that come every year, and that's always fun to watch the caterpillars and watch them make their chrysalis and emerge. And every year it's different. Every year there's a different experience, I guess, depending on the weather and stuff like that. So looking down this particular raised bed, this is where I grew a lot of tomatoes that I used the cattle panels for trellising them. And although we had a lot of problem with bugs, we did get quite a bit of tomatoes, and that's something I'll share in the future too. The varieties of tomatoes that I like. It's really difficult to grow tomatoes in Florida. It's just so hot here that they really struggle, but it's worth it to me even if I just get a couple of tomatoes off of a plant because there are so many varieties that you just cannot imagine the flavor. And then of course there's still basil. Later I will cut more of this basil to take inside for basically just a jar of flowers. It smells so good, and it's really surprising how pretty basil can be as a bouquet. So over on this raised bed, this is a roselle, which is in the same family as okra and hibiscus. After it flowers, you're left with what's called a calyx, and that is something that you can save for making teas. It's really tasty. And last year I actually made what was known as Florida cranberry sauce, where, if I remember the story right, like 100 years ago, cattle ranchers down in South Florida used roselle calyxes to make a cranberry sauce because it was too expensive to get cranberries from up north, and surprisingly similar in flavor and texture. But you can also see Sally did take out one of my plants. Pretty sad about it, but you know, it could have been a lot worse. This bed is just overrun with weeds, and as you can see, it's full of sweet potatoes. I am planning on digging them up soon. Again, I mentioned being a forgetful farmer. Even when I make notes on my calendar to be sure that I don't forget things, I really struggle with remembering when to harvest things and keeping an eye on things. And I actually did lose a few melons this year. We barely had any melons make, watermelons, and because I was unsure about when I was supposed to be harvesting them, we wound up losing quite a few. So here you can see there's more arches. There's nothing growing on them right now. I have planted some climbing beans and peas. Hopefully those will fill in soon, which would be great. And then over there, I did plant. I had some compost left over. I went ahead and planted over there, but I would like to add another raised bed there and there. Okay, and next to the raised beds, there is a row of peach trees, and behind them there is a row of blueberry bushes, and they're all still pretty young, so we're not getting as much off of them as we would like, but it's a start, you know. I will say waiting has been one of the biggest mistakes that I've ever made. Waiting until the timing was right, waiting until things were perfect, waiting until I could afford to buy 10 bushes when I really, you know, had I just bought one bush every year, I would have had more in the long run, but feeling like I needed to do all of it at once has held me back. Also back there, last year I had a row of that's where I grew okra and some other melons and squash, and they turned out really well last year, but this year has been horrible. Nothing grew. Bugs or animals ate pretty much everything that came up, so that was frustrating. Here is my janky little greenhouse that I love so much. We built this from old windows that people were throwing out, so it was almost free with the exception of the lumber to frame it. We used old leftover windows and tin. The bad thing about in Florida is it gets way too hot most of the year in the greenhouse to really grow anything, and having used a tin roof rather than a clear roof, it really isn't ideal for trying to grow things through the winter either, because it just doesn't get enough sunlight inside it for things to not be leggy. but I still love it. I still use it to store things, and I think it just looks really cute here in this part of the garden. And also, when we fenced in this whole area with cattle panel fencing, it made it such a difference because it's been much more helpful to keep the dogs out and to keep the horses out, because that has been a huge struggle in trying to grow things. All right, I hope I'm not making y'all dizzy. So this area is new. When I got some new birds in the spring, I had this small area fenced in, and they were in here tilling this up for me, and they did it in record time. So much faster than I expected. My intentions for this area, this is where I'm going to have a permanent asparagus and strawberry bed. I imagine it's going to be spectacular and beautiful when it's all said and done. For now though, since they did such a great job of tilling it up, I used brown paper to cover the area, but you can see so much of it has just disintegrated or washed away. And there are beans, some squash plants, just a bunch of things that I'm trying to grow. And just the other day, I sowed both of these areas that have row cover on them with cabbages, lettuces, mustards, kales, you name it, because we have two house bunnies, two little bunnies that live in our house, and my dream is to be able to grow all of their lettuces and things for the year, or at least for most of the year. In the summer, it's really hard to grow lettuces here in Florida, but to be able to grow as much of their food as possible to save money, because that's always important, but also just because how fun is that? The kales and lettuces that I grew back in the spring did really well, so pretty much I have just gone crazy with sowing seeds underneath this row cover. One reason I have it covered is to keep the animals out, mostly cats, but also because I'm trying to protect it from insects. So this row cover is actually made for frost. It's not an insect netting, but it serves the same purpose for me, and I already had it on hand. So again, most of what you'll see when I'm sharing a lot of things that we've built, it was all about using what we already had on hand and saving money. So coming out of what I call the raised bed garden, or the orchard maybe, I really don't know what to call it. We are looking now at the front of the greenhouse, and this whole area, by the way, our weed eater broke, so that's one of my excuses for why it's all weedy right here. But this whole area, I have a dream for this to be a cottage garden or a potager garden, where I will have herbs and tons of flowers for the birds and the bees, and also some perennials, and then probably tucking in some vegetables too. So right here is just one little section where it's full of weeds, but there was there was some milkweed in here for the butterflies, but they have just devoured it. And I'm going to walk over here and show you one little spot that I love so much. Remember how I said sometimes you put something down and you're just too tired to pick it up? It would be nice if I moved those things that are in the way, but it's fine. It is what it is. This is my reality. I do have this small section where obviously the cat is enjoying eating some lemongrass. This was my little spot, that's my little pride and joy, where I moved some of my mint. I'm not sure where I'm pointing because I can't see out here in this bright light. That is a marshmallow plant. Maybe I'll manage to learn how to harvest the root. Marshmallow root tea is really good, has some really good medicinal properties. My rosemary died, I think, from all the rain, and I don't know. I'm just hoping it comes back. I think I'll cut it back and then see if it grows back, because that has been surviving for a long time. So I'm hoping it's not completely dead. Showing you this right now, like, I'm not ashamed to show you parts of this that look kind of trashy, because I'm thinking it'll encourage me to make the effort to make it pretty, so that I can come back and show you how great it's going to be when it's done. I'm sure the air conditioner is really loud, but I'm going to just do this real quick. So this is from the other side. Okay, I will say, so we built this arbor out of pallets. They are 7 foot long but narrow pallets. And I will say that although I now suggest that when someone dies, you do not give them a plant, because it's really hard to keep a plant alive. And after our daughter died and I continually forgot to take care of the plants that we were given and they died, and it just added to feeling like I'm a failure. But someone gave me Confederate jasmine, and it has been an absolute rock star. There's a plant on either side, and it feels very secret garden. I just absolutely love it as the entrance into what will be the cottage garden. This little swimming pool had a hole in it. That was the ducks. I'll show you them later. But one gardener that I follow shows how to use a pool to make a little raised bed, and so that's what I'm going to do with it. I'm going to reuse a broken pool for the purpose of making a little raised bed. So it looks janky now, but it'll be really cute later. Okay, so here you can see the, what did I call it? The raised bed garden from the front yard. And we have another archway made out of the same pallet wood. I had loofah growing on it, and it was doing really great. It was my 3rd attempt at finally getting some seeds to sprout, and a bug or something ate the vines completely. They are destroyed. They look a little green on the top. I don't know if there's any hope for them, but what are you gonna do? You can also see our beehives. We had thought that this was going to be the year that we had success with bees. My husband caught 2 swarms. No, he caught 3 swarms. But they all eventually left. 2 of the swarms were smaller. 1 was a really big swarm. We knew there was a queen, and they stayed for a while, but eventually they left. So I'm afraid to say eventually we're going to probably have to order bees, because wild bees want to be wild. You can also see our janky bat house up there, and there's also a janky bird house that my husband built. The theme of this farm is janky. Along the front of the house we have a couple of hummingbird feeders. They are much more active in the evening, so I will come back later with some footage of the hummingbirds, but this time of year they are super active. And here's my pride and joy. There are 2 flocks of birds in there, an established flock of chickens and a rooster, and then some young hens and 2 geese. That fenced in area is where I'm going to have what's known as like a market style garden. That's my intention anyway. You guys are going to get to see me build it, and probably get to see me be super frustrated with it as well. But as quickly as they tilled up and fertilized that small area that I showed you earlier, I expect that they will do a fantastic job of this spot too. Hey Rusty. You say hi? Now we're going to the last little flock that we currently have living in our, say it with me, janky old chicken coop. And because I've left the door open so they could forage a little bit, they are nowhere to be found. So let's take a walk down to the creek. It's been about a week since the hurricane, and I have not been down here to see what our creek looks like. Our creek is fed from a spring that's also on our property, so the amount of flooding we would have had would be just from the amount of rain that we had. And maybe on our way back up we will see the rest of the chickens, the ducks, and the turkeys. If you're interested in getting started with birds or farm animals, chickens are definitely the gateway drug. But the last order that I placed with Murray McMurray was called Homesteader's Delight, and it's 10 hens and then 2 turkeys, 2 ducks, and 2 geese, but you don't get to pick the breeds. And when it comes to the turkeys, ducks, and geese, you don't know if it's going to be boys or girls or one of each. But you know, that comes at a huge discount and also gives you a fantastic variety of getting started with farming birds. Okay, so there is a lot of wet area down here so far. It is very boggy. This whole area back here, we actually borrowed some goats at one point, and they were able to clear this space, but then our friend who the goats belong to, they sold the goats after, you know, they'd done all the clearing that we needed them to do. But now I really want to get into goats for milking and really decide on a breed that is hardier and perhaps friendlier than the goats were that we borrowed. So here's our little creek. This is towards the end of our property. This is a peaceful, tranquil place just to come and listen to the sounds of nature. Because we're having unusually cool weather for September, it's not actually miserably hot today, and also the mosquitoes aren't too bad. So that's nice. If you're not familiar, the mosquito is the state bird of Florida. Of all the things that I have tried, gardening has been the only one that has actually managed to get me up out of bed, to encourage me to go outside and spend time in nature and to feel like I'm accomplishing something. I guess I need a hobby that is productive, even if it's just a little bit productive. I've tried to get back into painting and crocheting and other things, and none of them are as fulfilling or satisfying, if that makes sense, as gardening has been. So I hope that if you found this video, you are encouraged in whatever journey you're on to try to garden, live sustainably, homestead, all of those kind of things. And if you're feeling like you just can't do it all because other people that you follow that seem to have it all together, they give great advice. Absolutely wonderful to have those resources, but to recognize that it's okay if you are not there yet, and it's okay if what you're doing is on a smaller scale. Maybe you already know that. Maybe you don't struggle like I do with those feelings of inadequacy or failure. But I believe that what I'm sharing is relevant to at least a few people out there that get what I'm saying, that we have this guilt, we have these expectations of ourselves that we're not meeting, and like I said, struggling with depression makes it that much harder to feel like you're making any sort of headway. Gang's all here. The turkeys and the ducks are definitely bonded. So this is Abraham and Sarah. Aren't they beautiful? I haven't named the ducks yet. I'm pretty sure the gray duck is a girl and the black duck is a boy. I haven't named them yet. It would be nice if it is a boy and a girl. The same thing with the geese. I don't know if the geese are boys or girls yet. They're all only 4 months old. So Rusty is saying hello again. He really wants to come in here and eat the snack that I just gave the birds. No, sir. So that's it for now. Subscribe if you want to see more of these videos, and comment below what you would like me to make videos about. If you want to see videos about how to start seeds or no-till gardening or anything else that you're interested in around homesteading or gardening, I'm happy to share my experience so far or what I've looked into and plan on trying in the future. And I'll share more pictures of things over on my Instagram, so I'll put that link also in the description if you want to follow me on Instagram, and I hope you'll stay tuned for future videos. Bye.